Welcome back to Sniper Ghost Warrior 3. I want to have a conversation, though, instead of regular commentary where I'm just riffing on this game. Let's have a conversation in regards to everybody getting their panties in a bunch over the whole PlayStation thing, which, hey, don't get me wrong, we have a right to be angry about it, but I think that we need to have a much more in-depth conversation, and we have to have a more intelligent position here than just flashy catchphrases that are incorrect. And there's a lot to talk about here, because I think that we need to have a better language, a better position, and a more firm ground to stand on so that we can actually try and win this thing, and not end up like, not fool ourselves, like people over in the West Coast thinking that they defeated some 3D printing regulation bill when they haven't. They just, delayed the inevitable. They'll rewrite those laws and they'll attach it to some feel-good bullshit like, protecting children or tranny rights or something that people will be like, oh yeah, I want that to pass. That sounds great. And then the next thing you know, your 3D printer is bricked because you 3D printed a Nerf gun and that's close enough to their regulations. So there's some things that we're going to talk about that I think are going to anger people that I state, but they're realities and we have to accept them because ultimately the goal is for us to be united and win. And this is how I think we can win. And I am not a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer or a law expert. So we obviously need to get lawyers involved, and this isn't legal advice other than me stating, do not pirate stuff. You're asking for trouble. Okay, just don't do it. And we'll get into why in a minute. But let's look at some uncomfortable realities first and foremost, and then just stick with me because I think that you'll understand this and you'll see where we're going and why I think that this is the better way for us to be able to actually win this. First of all, we have to accept our responsibility on this because we're to blame. Whether you like it or not, we are to blame. We've accepted, them releasing unfinished games and, paying full price for games that aren't finished. And then we can't really play or enjoy for close to a month before they patch it. But it comes along with paid DLC, and we tolerate paid DLC. We've tolerated microtransactions. We've tolerated subscription, virtual consoles, and stuff like that. That all sets this precedence that we're okay with these types of things. So this is just the natural progression. And, as a PC gamer, I'm going to admit it, I'm guilty of this as well. Because us PC gamers, we tolerate early access alpha, and I own early access alpha games, and it's a gamble because sometimes you're going to have these independent devs that are actually legitimate, that are honest, and that they are developing the game based on the feedback of the players and what makes sense, and you get to see the game evolve, and it's a cool experience. But then you're going to have some people who have a zombie survival game, where it's like they milk it and it's in alpha for like 10 years. And then when they released the quote unquote full version, they're now on version 3 and it's a completely different game. They keep changing the game with every update. So obviously, and then there's developers who will milk something put together something half-assed and they'll do a few patches here and there and they'll milk it until the popularity dies off and then they just disappear. So, us PC gamers are very guilty of it as well. So, and I'm not just a PC gamer. I'm a console gamer. I still play, PlayStation 2 and 4 and Xbox 360 and then all the Nintendo consoles. But, I grew up playing, my very first console was the NES. I started gaming but well before I was 10 years old in the late 80s. And, I played the NES, the SNES. N64 was the first console I got to buy with my own money and, buy my own games. And that console changed my life. And then all of a sudden, the golden era of gaming came out where you had the GameCube, the Xbox, and the PlayStation 2. And you had consoles that were powerful and could pull off more in-depth games, but we were still at a position where there was no such thing as DLC, there was no such thing as internet patching or any of that nonsense. So games had to come out finished, and if they didn't come out finished, if there was problems, those devs were paying for it. You know, that was a big, you know, shot in the foot if you came out with a game. Like, I don't play Rockstar games anymore. I haven't played Rockstar games. I gave them a chance with LA Noire, which ended up being shit, and I gave them a chance with Red Dead Redemption, which the online was shit. So, you know, but I bought those games used because I'm not going to give them my money, because even all the way back in the day of the PS2, Vice City had flaws in it. I couldn't, I mean, I'm a guy who likes to 100% my games, and you couldn't 100% it because of bugs in the game. Or Bethesda, how many times have they, you know, how many times have they ported over Skyrim and it still has the same game-breaking bugs in it? There's things you can't complete, you know, because of issues. So, and they don't fix it. They're that lazy, and they know that people are going to buy stuff because there's too many damn consumers instead of gamers in the industry. It's become a consumer platform where we have people who pretend that they're gamers, but they're not. They're just consumers who are buying entertainment, consuming entertainment just so that they can fit in. And they're not even buying the good shit. They're buying the run-of-the-mill, you know, goy slop bullshit like Call of Duty. You know, you know, they're playing all the popular shit because they just want to fit in. So we have to acknowledge that that's, you know, largely our fault. We've tolerated this stuff instead of holding people to a standard. And then we have to also get to the reality that never in the history of your life have you ever bought software. It's never been that way. I'm sorry to if you don't like that, but that's the truth. Okay, I am a business owner. I own a couple businesses. I am an artist and a musician and an inventor, and I own copyrights. I hold copyrights and patents, so I have a pretty decent understanding of the law and fair use. Which is why when I ran my Nintendo YouTube channel, I never got copyright strikes, because I know what fair use is. Okay, and technically, fair use states that you can use a portion of a copyrighted body of work or trademarked body of work or patented whatever. You can use a portion of it in, you know, relation to critiquing, education, or news presenting. Okay, so, but what you use cannot detract from the body of the work. So if I play a story-driven game and I show the entire story of the game, me making commentary over it is not fair use, okay? Now, why do Let's Players get away with this? Well, it's up to the copyright holder, the patent holder, on how they're going to enforce that. And I think most game developers or publishers understand that this is free advertisement. Most people are going to go and watch a game and be like, oh, I really like this. So they're going to go out and buy it. And that's why people like Rad Brad and other big YouTubers will get games in advance so that we can see gameplay a week in advance and go, oh, well, crap, I want this. This looks really good. And also, I think that, you know, it's become a replacement for strategy guides. If we get stuck on a game, we can go watch a YouTube video and figure out what we need to do. So I think that it's intelligent for the developers and, you know, publishers to allow, you know, Let's Plays, but they don't have to. At any point in time, they could start copyright striking people, and they have a legal precedence to do that. You know, now it's kind of a gray area when it's an open world survival game or something like that. Like if you're playing, you know, 7 Days to Die, for instance, which, you know, I don't like the fun pimps, but I'm picking that game out because I have played it for a long time, and there is no end game. It's just survival. It just is what it is. There's really no story or anything like that. So you're not really detracting from the game because everybody's experience is going to be different in how they interact with the game. So you could probably argue in court that, you know, a Let's Play of an open world game with no storyline is not in violation of fair use because there's no, you know, there's no real body of work to detract from. But, you know, the thing is we've never owned software. We've always ever purchased a license that allows us to utilize the software, whether it's a word processing app on our computer or phone, or whether it's a video game, a movie, whatever. That's why you can't live stream an entire movie and whether you pay, make people pay for it or not, you can't live stream an entire movie. If you get caught, you're going to get in trouble. The NFL is notorious for going after people for doing that kind of stuff, and they are within their legal rights, whether you like it or not. That's just reality. So we don't own the software. We don't own the game. We own a disc or a cartridge, and that cartridge or that disc is our physical license that says we have a right to utilize that game, to enjoy that software, with the caveat that we have a device that can play it, that can utilize the software. It's up to us to provide that device that can play it. It's not up to, if I go out into a secondhand store and I buy an Atari 2600 cartridge, I own a cartridge. I don't own the software. But if I have a console that can utilize the cartridge and let me, interact with the software, then I can play the software. That's the license, the legal agreement. But if I don't have an Atari 2600, then I'm SOL. It's not Atari's responsibility to provide that for me, Now, conversely, no developer, publisher, whoever can walk into my house and take my games. They can't take my discs or my cartridges. That's how people get shot, right? Because I paid for that disc. That disc is mine. That cartridge is mine. I own that. I don't own the software. The software is copywritten. It's owned by the developer or the publisher or the publisher. But I own that disc. So you can't take that disc from me. And as long as I have a console or a device that can play that disc, I have a right to access that software. And that's, I think, how we are going to win this is, one, we have to acknowledge that we don't own software. We've never owned software. We own a license. We buy a license that allows us to utilize it so long as we have a device that can let us utilize and interact with that software. So when you say that if buying isn't owning, piracy isn't stealing, you're making a completely asinine and incorrect argument. Piracy is stealing. You're stealing the software that you don't have a right to, that you don't own, you'll never own. And utilizing that software without legally purchasing the license to do so is theft. Whether you like it or not, that is the legal truth. And that is how you are going to get screwed over in court if you get caught pirating stuff. So don't pirate stuff. So we can't end up being overly, reactionary to things and end up shooting ourselves in the foot. We have to play this smart because, what are we going to do? We're going to start freaking out, about all this, and then we're going to go start running out and buying as many, used games or physical media as possible, so that we quote unquote own it. And, there's going to be such a massive increase in the demand for this stuff that we're going to see inflation. Businesses will take advantage of this, okay? And they will jack up prices and screw us over. I saw it recently when, it was reported that Hardlines is one of the more rare games, and is highly sought after and goes for a higher price than normal in the used market. I saw a copy of Hardlines at a local secondhand store go from $9 to almost $20, and then it sold. Somebody bought it. And then we're going to get to a point where, there's such a demand for physical games that we see this type of price gouging, and we're going to get to a point where, a copy of Sims 4 on the PlayStation 4 is going to end up being like $50, and we're going to end up paying damn near full price for used games, and we're going to end up pricing ourselves out of the used market, and you're going to have people with a lot of money who are going to sit here and buy up a whole bunch of stuff and then turn around and go on eBay and price gouge. And if we don't buy it, well, now we're screwed out of, this physical media that we wanted, and it's our fault again. So we can't be reactionary about stuff. We have to be smart, and we have to think, and we need to be strategic about things. We can't just be reactionary and get our panties in a bunch and start acting like children. We have to be smart about this. What we need to do is recognize that we are buying a license and a legal contractual agreement that is letting us use that software under certain circumstances, under certain terms of use, i.e., if I own an NES cartridge, that's my license. I own the license to utilize that software. If I own a functioning NES, then I can utilize that software and interact with that software, i.e. play that game anytime I want to, and nobody can stop me because I have a device that can utilize the software, and I have the cartridge, which is my legal license allowing me to do so. So that's what I think we have to approach this, is setting the legal precedents. And this is where I'm not a lawyer. This isn't legal advice. I think that we need to get lawyers involved, but I think this is how we win this, is we set the legal precedents, because most court cases are won by being able to refer back to other court cases and say, well, in 1972, XVY, this court case ruled this, and that's relevant to this because. And once we set these precedences and we control the narrative, the definitions, and don't let them change the narrative, don't let them change the definitions like they did with the definition of a vaccine and stuff like that, we say, because this is a small symptom of a bigger issue, which leads up to things like the World Economic Forum's 2030 agenda, okay? And, it's like for instance, with the supposed win by the Save Gaming, coalition in California or whatever, where it's like now, they have to give you 60 days notice that they're going to stop support, and then they have to have a solution if it's online games, this or whatever. They're going to find ways to skate around that. A good example of that is Animal Crossing Pocket Camp with Nintendo. The entire point of that game was the online interaction. It was the events. It was helping out your friends and so forth. So when they stopped support of that game and then they said, hey, you can buy a single-player version of it, nobody wants to buy a single-player version of it. Even if they didn't charge you, they just said, okay, it's single player now. Nobody would play it because it's pointless. Without the online interaction with your friends and the events and stuff like that, it becomes a pointless game. So they're going to find ways to fulfill their legal obligations and satisfy that, but they're not obligated to satisfy you. That's the thing that we have to fight. So I think what we need to do is we need to realize, we need to accept and acknowledge that we don't own the software, we own a license. But we need to define that license as a legal contractual agreement. And we need to set standards of what that legal contractual agreement, holds, so that they can't sneak in legal jargon, bullcrap, small fine print nonsense here and there to screw us over in the future. And only satisfy a certain legal, limit that they have to hit without actually fulfilling anything to us. So if we go, hey, we own this license, it's a legal contractual agreement that if I have the disc or the cartridge and I have a device that can play it, or if I've downloaded that game, and it's physically, the software is physically stored on my console or my hard drive or whatever, that I am allowed to utilize that software as I see fit, so long as I'm not in violation of copyright laws or IP laws, I'm allowed to play that game whenever I want to and enjoy that game, and you can't take it away from me because we have a legal agreement, a contractual agreement, because the license says that I can use it. And we need to force a definition of a license so that they cannot, put in, legal double speak or fine print crap that screws us over. I think that's what we need to do. How we go about it and what we do, I think this is where a lawyer comes into play. But I think that that's what we need to do, is we need to set the precedents. And what we need to do is we need to have a legal precedence where the license is defined as a legal contractual agreement, and that there are certain limitations that can be put on these licenses that protect the consumer. So that, because back in the day, man, like even in the PlayStation, Xbox and GameCube era, I was still playing PC back then, and games like Soldier of Fortune 2, there was no developer or publisher servers. My brother and I, we built a computer. We hosted our own game. We had 2 clans, we were hosting our own games and tournaments and things like that. We were doing LAN parties for Quake 3 and stuff like that. It's like, so yeah, it's cool that if they have an online game and they shut down support for it, that they have to provide some type of solution, such as being able to support private servers or support LAN parties or something like that. That's cool because that's the way it should be, in all honesty. Just like I play Vane. I know that that's an early access game, but I love that game, and my brother and I play it. And when we're playing online together, he's connecting to me. I'm hosting the game. There is no third-party servers going on, and that's the way it should be. So I think what we need to do is we need to acknowledge we don't own the game, we own a license. We need to define legally that license is a contract, and that the developers and publishers are legally bound to provide certain and specific services to us because we buy that license, and that they are not allowed to just change that license after the fact, because that's a bait and switch. That's fraud. And if we can get that defined as fraud, that they can't change the definition or the terms of the license after the fact, and that they can't just automatically say, well, we decide that we don't want you to have access to this game anymore, and then violently revoke the license, the terms of agreement, because in my opinion that's fraud. So if we can set the precedence that the license is a contractual agreement, put limitations on it so that they can't screw us with double speak and fine print stuff, and then also set the precedence that changing the license after the fact or revoking the license and taking the games away is fraud, which one of the few legal and justifiable reasons for government to exist is to protect people from fraud, which Americans won't know about because our government, openly allows fraud to exist. They're complicit in so much fraud, it's ridiculous. But if we can do that, and again, I think we need to get lawyers involved in this, but if we can do that, if we can set the precedence in a court somehow that these licenses are contractual agreements, there needs to be limitations and clear definitions to the agreement, that changing the agreement or revoking the agreement is in violation of a legal contractual agreement and is fraud, and the publisher or developers can be held accountable for this. I think that's how we win this. So hopefully this is a good idea. I'm just going based on what I know as a copyright and patent holder and how I protect myself and the things that I do. So I hope that this makes sense, and I hope this gives some smarter people an idea. And I'm recording this separately from the gameplay, so if it's running short, and there's more gameplay to be had, enjoy the rest of the video. But hopefully this will be a nice stack of ammo to be able to get us a firm standing and let us beat them at their own game. But we also have to be savvy, because just like what our Wall Street beat the hedge funders at their own game years ago with AMC and so forth, and GameStop stock. They figure out a way to screw people over. So we got to be real savvy about this. But anyway, I hope this leads us somewhere. But, we need to be more active. We need to be more active, and we need to be less tolerant, because you get what you tolerate, Go do your research on the World Economic Forum 2030 agenda. Go read Aristotle's Politics. Go get knowledgeable about intellectual property rights and property right protections and copyrights and fair use and patents and all that stuff, and know what we're talking about so that we can set the precedences and protect ourselves as consumers and fans and individuals from predatory businesses and business practices that are blatant fraud, because that's the thing. We have to get rid of the fraud. There's too much fraud, especially in the West, because of how corrupt the occupations we call governments are, and the corporations. I've said it many times. Not that there is actually a right wing in America, but it's like they say the left blames the corporations for everything, and the right blames the government for everything, and both sides are too stupid to realize they're both right. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video and this talk, and I hope that it's helpful in some way and we can make some ground. Don't give up. Fight until you can't fight anymore, man. This isn't just about gaming. So yeah, we'll wrap up this game in the next episode, and I'll be back to making fun of the game and then talking about my review of the game, which I think is also relevant to this discussion. But and until the next video, take care, everyone.
Hey, what's wrong? You okay? Oh, shit, it's one of ours.
Search the perimeter. Friendly down! Shit, it's one of ours. Locate the shooter.
Where we go? We got a casualty.